Hi everyone, I'm going to speak in English as well. I hope that's fine with everyone for Wiki. Next time we're going to learn Croatian, so it's going to be different. I'm going to talk about success and failure of digital transformation. I come from a different background. I will talk about that in a minute. I'm a corporate background, so I don't struggle with the cash flow every day, but the atmosphere in those companies is as if you are bankrupting every day. So more or less, I understand the pain in that sense. First, the question is, does anyone in the room really like the word transformation, any kind of transformation? Not really, right? You do. Okay, maybe in that sense, but generally, like the transformation is always with some kind of anxiety and a negative connotation because companies are every 2 years having some trend, and then you have a lean transformation, you have customer experience transformation, digital. Now it's all about AI. It was data and so on. So, like every 2 years, there is a new transformation coming up. And people are really frustrated whenever someone says some kind of transformation. So who am I and why I'm talking actually about this very awkward topic? My background is, as mentioned, corporate. I started my career in consulting and then went through like over 15 industries, more or less. Last, let's say, corporate experience was in healthcare. I was a managing director of a private clinic, from restructuring a company from a small startup to really scaling it to new locations. Before, I was leading some various transformations from operational efficiency, so redesign of contact centers, back offices, automations, etc., to really doing lately some big stuff like integrating to big telcos in Serbia. And so I come from more or less various backgrounds, both in the large scale projects to really like very operational topics. And why I wanted to talk about digital transformation was because whenever someone says transformation, it's always a very blurry topic. So no one in the company really knows what it means when we talk about AI these days. And if you talk about big corporates, they will always say, we are doing AI. AI is now on the agenda. It's our strategic priority. But no one really understands what's going on in the background. And before they even understand what they are doing, there is already a press release, like the whole internal organization is talking about it. You have a steering committee, project manager, board is on board, like millions of the budget, etc. How many of you are in tech, have some kind of a small business in tech? Okay, so hopefully this will be interesting for you, because typically when big organizations start to talk about digital transformation, they start thinking about IT transformation. That's not the same thing. So IT transformation is always the main pain point. You have some legacy system. That system is not supporting your business anymore. And when you start thinking about how to change that, you want to change that box. You want to change something which is your pain in the ass for the next previous 10 years. And they actually start doing it wrong at the beginning. And they do fail. Why is this important? It's because these projects are long-term. They have really long-term consequences, and very often they have a very high cost in failing. I myself experienced a couple of really big fails of digital transformation. So it was hundreds of millions euros lost and projects failed. But let's say the biggest lost asset in that was really the motivation of the people, because you cannot do any kind of transformation without having people buy in. And this actually results in this picture here. Whenever you say some kind of transformation, you have this one poor project director or a project manager who is the prophist, and he's going around the company and saying we need to transform in this or that way. And then he has zero believers in the organization, because every 2 years there's a new topic, new trend. The last transformation didn't even end, and we start another one, etc. If we would ask in the company various people what digital transformation means for them, management would always say, okay, it's a big budget, it's a big project, it's a huge risk. All my stakeholders are looking at that. We want it fast, but we want it cheap, but it needs to be big. So it's like no one is happy in that situation, and all eyes are on that project. If you ask IT is looking at 3 years of integrations, various migrations, the stakeholders from business sides who don't really understand or know what they want, but they want IT to solve everything. And they see already them buying some out-of-the-box solution, but then customizing it to the very extent. And also they understand that business is not really ready to simplify any kind of process which they have internally. They just want all their pain points to disappear today. And typically you have IT saying also, we can do this ourselves. We don't need actually a new solution, a new platform, new vendor, but we don't have the budget. They never gave us the sponsorship and so on. So you have a second very, I would say, anxious and tense stakeholder. And then you have actually the employees who are very frustrated by every transformation because they know that IT resources will be fully locked to this project. They are having another agile church, so everyone is now going into ceremonies and then all again some new product teams, etc. And they are thinking, okay, now we can solve everything we haven't solved in 15 years. So they start to be unrealistic because they want to know, if we are in it, if you have subscribed us to this project, let's solve all the pain points. At the end, they really expect that they will get 20% of what they ask, but the company will have to be stripped of all the operational functions like call centers, back office will be cut down to 30% of people, and they start to be frustrated at the very beginning. So what I actually want to talk about today is why does this kind of processes typically fail in the big corporations, and how can it be different? I have really couple of good experiences in a way that it worked. And actually, the biggest lever there were small companies, were even startups and small tech companies who were the bigger motor of that change in a positive sense in the corporate. So coming to that, actually what is the biggest challenge is when we start these kind of big projects, everyone is thinking about legacy systems and let's change core first. Instead, what really makes the difference is creating that initial momentum of a change and resolving processes and pain points of the frontline and the operations. In every company, sales is the king. So if you try to simplify the life to salespeople, to front people, you're winning already belief within the company. And typically companies approach it from the big bang perspective. Let's do now like a big project. And then really where the change is fastest notable and really employees are super happy, this is somehow, put at one part of the processes, because everyone is approaching digital transformation as a transformation of the technology, not really looking at how technology can help business and change business to better. Then the second pain point is really trying to resolve everything. So, okay, now let's map all the processes in the company. Let's do customer journey mapping, business process mapping, then IT infrastructure mapping. Let's put down the list of all the pain points, etc. So it's like a huge wish list of more or less over 1,000 lines in Excel of everything we want to change with that one, but no one really understands how this process should look like as a digital first process, even though if we are talking about end customer, if we are talking about internal customer or an employee, no one is really thinking in that sense, nor breaking it down to the smaller pieces. So what actually is the good approach is to break down the scope in smaller pieces. So you can still change that big system, that big legacy, but you need to break it into specific parts, which will really create that momentum in the company when something changes. Too many people and too little changes. I don't know if you have been in any of these processes, but usually it starts like, okay, let's pick up the 20 most talented people who are, the game changers in the company and put them 100% in that project. That list ends up in 100 people usually. The rest, which should be like 30%, is nearly 80-90% involved. And you have really all the talent in the organization locked on continuous meetings and really frustrated because then they start discussing, is the problem of that process, let's say, a business rule or a product, or did the processes complicated the product or a business rule? And it's not really productive. So you lock a lot of people in the organization in that one. And of course, all of this, as it's a big budget, many people involved, huge scope, has a very complex procurement. And then procurement wants to win. They want to show that they have really stripped down the price. And it happens that they actually strip down the scope. So from the very beginning, you really end up into having something which is no one is happy with. So at the end, you get like a very complex system. Typically, you either cut down the scope or really kill the budget and go overboard. And you sometimes quit. So I had an experience of maybe 3 very big fails in the digital transformation. One was insurance company who actually 3 years was implementing the new core system. Spent a lot of money on that, a lot of people on that, and ended up really canceling that project. So like writing off millions of euros and started all over again from the scratch. They actually did 1 year pause in between. So they said, okay, let's rethink what we did wrong there, how we can do it in a different way. And they actually went to this right side of the page here. They broke down the whole scope into smaller scopes. They built teams around that one. They did combination of internal teams, so IT teams plus business teams, then some combinations of internal business teams plus external vendors. So they started resolving front-first processes. They decided to go one chunk by one chunk. The second is also on telecom, failed 3 times integrating two CRMs. So they were trying to combine fixed and mobile customers, failed once, failed twice. And then as a third attempt, they actually said, okay, that's an IT job, let IT do it in their own pace. It will take probably some years because it's a data migration, etc. But let us really resolve business issues with technology. And then they also started to the right-hand side process. My best experience was actually A1 digital transformation, because it didn't start as a project which started from a core system. They have successfully before implemented a new CRM. They bought a Zibble CRM. They all had all the left-hand side issues, so they actually ended up with phase 1 launch, which was good enough for them, but they were not happy with what they got because it was super complex. They spent a lot of time on it, and then instead of going to phase 2 or phase 3 of that project, they spent 2 years on really resolving change requests from that phase 1. And when they decided to do a digital transformation, they say, okay, this is not going to be an IT project, it's going to be a program. And program needs to tackle various areas, the biggest and most important being really the skill part of it. So what they did is we set up, I was part of that team, we set up the, let's say, very small team of 3-4 people who went around. It was a combination of IT business who went around to every single function in the company and asked them, like, what is your worst pain point in the process that you have every day? And let's not talk about how you want it to be changed, but what is really, nagging you every day. And we put a list of all these and said, okay, let's pick a couple of those for each area. So each organization or each function in the company actually had their own project, even procurement and controlling and HR, had some data science, education, etc. And let's really build skills there. Let's resolve one thing and let's do something for that specific area. And so it didn't really become, let's fix the processes from the core systems, but rather let's really, in every part of the organization, embed something digital, which will really improve processes, make people more efficient, and resolve some frustrations. So this was, let's say, some examples of that transformation. What was good in that process as well is that in some areas we noted that we have really good internal competences. We had people working priorly to this CRM integration. We had good IT team. At that point in time, IT was outsourced. That was a trend. IT is like every couple of years insourcing, then outsourcing, and corporations like to do that. We decided to really insource back some of the IT and then set up a team around those. They were working on some. On some other, we actually said, okay, this is maybe never going to be on top 10 priorities, such as, let's say, back office processes, because if you cut 10, 15 people in the back office, their salaries will never justify any software. We said, okay, let's maybe find a startup there, someone who can maybe help us in automating these processes and we can learn from them. So we had a combination of those. And then we have some Croatian software companies and IT companies where we said, okay, this is something we could be able to do ourselves, but let's rather do it with them because we can learn digital skills from them. They're actually living that. So it's not a digital transformation for them, it's a way of working. So we did a combination of different partnerships. We launched, I think, over 40 proof of concepts at that time, so various areas, either proof of concept paid or unpaid. It was really depending on the partner. And also it was, the KPI was, let's try to launch something in 3 months. Let's not wait for 3 years. Let's really try to do even the smallest thing in 3 months. And it was a really success. Why I'm saying it was a success? I think we learned a lot from that. We had a partner in Hub 385. It was an incubator similar to Techno Park here. And they actually really helped us to change this mindset when we were talking about some issues and processes we would like to resolve. We asked them, okay, do you have any idea? This is how we would approach it. And then they would say, okay, we have a startup for that. This is a good company you can talk to. Of course, we had some discussions with other telecoms abroad, etc. But the idea was really that we partnered with someone who knew it better than we, because it was in their core of the business. And that's how we built this whole roadmap. How it ended up, it really lived in the organization and is still living. So our RPA started as we introduced Neho, which was a startup at that time, to work with us on three processes. It was really so good that we actually kind of insourced them for 2 years, helped them scale, helped them really hire people. But then in return, what we ask is really to learn our people how to do it, to skill the team. And now there is in A1 really a team working only on RPA independently on that software. Then the second part was really, let's say, at that point in time, data science was, everyone was talking about doing some advanced analytics models, but no one really had a use case on how this works in business, what's the result of it. And we started with a little bit of pilots and then decided to really build internal team on that, which is now developing all AI use cases in A1. They are really super happy with their internal team, which they have, and they are building a lot of these. So this is something which evolved into kind of a new part of the organization. So it was various things. And also what was very interesting, through these teams, which were agile teams more or less, we realized that we need to reorganize how people are sitting in the building. So what we did, we really reorganized sitting of every function in the company. So each floor was actually people were put together in a process how they work with. So we put together data science team next to CRM team, next to digital advertising team, to make sure that they really, even when they're not using the rooms, that they are really talking and communicating. So they are not in different buildings, they are not in different floors, etc. So we really changed how people work based on that. Also, all the meeting rooms, we killed all the meeting rooms. There are no more meetings. This will be product rooms. So if you have a team and you're working on some kind of topic which is relevant for digitizing company, you can have a meeting room. Otherwise, sorry, find your way in a cafe. There were some standing tables, but we really killed like all these typical corporate 45 minutes meetings. Really wanted to have them very efficient working around topics. So what was really interesting here is this combination of partnership. It was not all in source. It was not one big thing. It was several across all parts. And at the end, it really embedded in the organization. People started to believe in that and started to live through that. What is important in this digital skills topic is the topics which we taught them or actually had as an academy were not only for business. We were having various topics which were kind of for leisure, for, something which you learn from, so that people start to actually use technology in their own life and start really liking it, because it really then created this positive energy about the topic they are working on. As I think I already covered that why it worked. It worked because of these different partnering models. It worked because we actually learned from someone else. We identify the topics where we will not, buy someone or pay someone to come and work for us, but rather let's work with them. In many of these occasions, we actually sent people to sit at vendor site, at IT partner site. We said, okay, let them really experience how it is to work in an IT company. Let's not try to pretend we are super modern, we are telco. Telco is a very old industry. Let's really try to understand how does it work. People are very happy with that. And we kind of integrated then this startup mindset back to the organization. And as mentioned, this love tech, I think this is a very important topic nowadays when the new transformation is AI, actually. You need to really learn people how to use AI for their private life, how they can use all these tools to plan travel, to check the construction costs of when they are refurbishing an apartment, any kind of use case, which is something they can relate to, not necessarily for work. And this is something where you really get people think about tech, because when they start thinking about tech, understanding tech, then when they are working everyday work, they will propose the solution. The solutions come from their own. Of course, all this big transformation of IT systems was going in parallel and it was going slow, but more or less all the key pain points which were resolved through this program. Why? Because you typically are not resolving an IT problem, you are resolving everyday frustrations of people who work in the organization. And what I want to say to some of you who are in tech, in SMEs, and typically you try to pitch or enter a big company, is what I saw several times. Typically, they try to present a solution. Like, what is the solution? How this solution is excellent? Typically, companies have seen similar solutions, and how they actually start to believe in it is really if you talk to them about the problem you're solving, and not in general, like, okay, we will cut down your back office costs, but really try it, test it, call the contact center, see how efficient they are, go to the shop, talk to the people in the shop. So really start talking to their front to understand the pain points and come with a very specific to that client. Second is they don't really trust presentations, so everyone will present, and if you're a small corporate is big, of course they will say, okay, do it for free, offer for free, but offer small scale. You will not invest huge amount of resources to that because you cannot afford your day costs a lot. But then try some partnering model. Say, okay, we will work for free, but if this works, then you will buy from us 3 or 4 more processes. Or you charge it, you charge the cost without any margin, let's say, and try to really, pick something which is not so painful for you, like very short. And the last point is, I think, something everyone usually neglects is every big company, whenever they are doing some kind of transformation, they have a person who's responsible to that. And he, as mentioned at the beginning, he has 0 believers, he has 0 supporters. He only has the board or the group board who is telling him, we need to be fluent in AI, and they don't know how to be fluent in AI, most of them. And you need to find that person and help that person. Typically, those people are going to these kind of events. They go to many conferences. You need to find them and you need to really help them solve some problem, not necessarily always with your solution. You can maybe propose another company which which will be useful for them, but you need to help them have this, let's say, internal win, internal PR, because once some of these use cases work, he's then in star in the company, he gets more budget, he gets more belief, he doesn't have to prove himself to everyone else, and then he unlocks the way to the rest of you. That example for us was RPA. RPA is really something you will not pitch digital transformation in the company with, we're going to do robot process automation. But when this worked in a very short time and scaled big, this was like a star topic in the group. Everyone is talking about that as if we launched a completely new platform. So because it was fast, it showed result, it showed that people are happy to do it, and it was something they can talk about. So this last part is, in my opinion, very, very important. And if I would like you to take something away from my speech today, is that really all these big projects in the corporations don't really start with big projects. They start with these small wins. And this is where I see really SMEs and tech startups having a big opportunity, because you are these small, fast rockets who can help them to really build momentum, not to build successful, huge project, but really to build this momentum so that they can keep building the remaining part on that. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
How do you measure a success? Do you always have very measurable results?
In all of these cases, yes. So typically, when there is a budget involved, you need to at least show some KPIs. Not necessarily it's financial KPI, but it's some kind of KPI. You do either a pilot and then you say on this pilot group compared to the control group, this was the result. But yes, always there was some hard KPI to that one. We did also measure a lot of the soft KPIs in terms of employee satisfaction, engagement, and this really grew over time. Of course, there were some burnouts. You typically have them in any intense programs. And then you see how this evolves over time, how you actually retain the talent, this list of 2,200 people which end up in the project you really want to have at the end of that program in the company with some knowledge. We built a lot of development paths for those people in a sense that we gave some of them like completely new functions, such as this cognitive AI. We also had some sales front-end as internal development solution with that team and the manager who was actually a product owner before. So we measured, I would say, also this HR KPIs a lot.
Like within a year?
Yeah, quitting in a year or talents leaving the company within the program. I mean, you usually in these programs always have the retention package. You link some kind of bonus, etc. But people, if they're really frustrated, they do leave, and you want to prevent that because when these people leave, they actually really take out huge amount of knowledge from that company, and this is not their first transformation. It's like the 7th project they are in, and you really need to be successful to make sure that you don't lose this credibility. Because, as mentioned, Croatian Insurance lost millions on that, but it really lost a lot of people after they canceled that project because many people were living in that project for 3 years, gave their best, and then like this was a big failure. So you need to really keep this positive thought. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
What was the timeline for the A1 transformation?
Well,
and second question, what are the policies for remote work?
At that point in time, we actually introduced remote work first in the company. It was before COVID, so it didn't have anything to do with that. We had shared desk, screen desk policies and all this introduced at that point in time. IT worked all the time remote. They had, I think, obligation to come twice a month to the office just for some networking. We had a lot of these networking zones in the company. Of course, when we had some crisis management, then everyone needed to be in. And timeline was, I think this was we started with this, I think it was 2017. The intensive part was actually 2 years. Then somehow it was an organic part of the organization. It was no longer a program. Then I don't know, I think some other program came in, how it works usually. Now they have AI as a program as any other probably large company. But what was important with this one is that actually all these structures and ways of working continued. Even this, like there was another topic in the company, like it really stayed. So I think that's the biggest success. If you talk about KPI, it was not some program which was closed and had like a closed project chapter and we moved on to another topic. It changed the organigram, like the org of the company introduced some of these roles and functions. Many people who actually left the company left to be entrepreneurs from what they learned in that program. So they became coaches, etc. So it was really interesting how this changed the organization. In terms of remote work, I think IT likes it really in, let's say, full time. Majority of other like to be kind of present at some point in time. Then this brings challenge because once you introduce remote work, companies tend to shrink the space. And then if you want to bring employees back, and they sometimes do want, you don't have enough space. So then, you need to introduce these bookings, systems, etc. But they do still, I think, work in a hybrid way. So they have, I think, 2-3 days a week where everyone except for the front line, of course, can work from home.